All right, ladies and gentlemen, the regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals to the Town of Orleans is called to order. We have, and constituting 4 members and constituting a quorum are myself and Mr. McCarthy, Mr. Taub, and Mr. Mulligan. Also present is the building commissioner of the Town of Orleans, Tom Evers. There are 2 items on the agenda for tonight. I thought I would report on one item. The zoning board of, the zoning bylaw task force was created somewhere in the late 90s by the Board of Selectmen. And its charge, the composition includes the town planner, 1 or 2 members of the planning board, a designee from the Board of Selectmen, a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I think there's a member or 2 at large, and it meets periodically, sometimes on calls, sometimes every month. And since I became chairman, I have assumed the role of the connection with the zoning bylaw task force. And at the request of Mr. Mulligan and I joined with him, I proposed to the town planner the problem that we have been facing and trying to work through, caused by the zoning amendment, where the buildable upland, which was always, for some years has been part of the zoning bylaw, was affected by the remapping by FEMA of the floodplain maps. And the result that it has occurred in several cases, and without discussing the cases, which were already decided, I proposed to the town planner that this was something that the planning board ought to look at and we ought to start talking about. In any event, that is now on the continuing agenda of the task force. Other items include changing the signage bylaws. For example, whether there ought to be, and it's usually in response to kind of problems that arise from time to time. For example, how long a sign, a for rental sign, can be kept up and visible. So, if anyone has a burning desire to participate, these are open meetings, and I will make more of a attempt to report on the doings as long as I'm attending them. The last meeting consisted of 2 members of the planning board, the town planner, myself, and Robert Osterberg, the former chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, who I don't know his actual position now as to how he qualifies, but as a matter of fact, it's like looking at a bylaw. The charge as given by the Board of Selectmen and had been amended once or twice since 1999 was placed in front of us, and it also indicated that there were term limits, and you know how that is when you look at bylaws and find that people have been, like myself, have been overstaying their welcome. And as a matter of fact, I don't ever remember having been officially appointed to sit on this task force. But that's the stuff that's done, not necessarily behind the scenes, but I think it's connected, and I owe you a report because we're trying to move forward with something that intimately does affect the Zoning Board of Appeals. My attitude, and I think I have a sense from the members of the board, is that the principal purpose of the Zoning Board of Appeals is to just decide the applications one after another. Maybe with some sense of precedent, and maybe not. But the fact of the matter is, that's the way I've observed it. I have also have a sense that a connection with the zoning board of appeals, which could operate in a complete vacuum from the other town boards and agencies, is not probably a good thing. So this connection I really enjoy, that I'm able to talk with people from the planning board, and there are a lot of folks in the town who think that the rubber meets the road with the planning board, and who have a sense of the big picture, something which we don't necessarily have, except our own experience and education with the construction and determination of what is in the best interest of a neighborhood, because that's almost always a factor in our deliberations here. So having made that speech, that's really what I thought you ought to know.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, when we first encountered, at least when I first encountered as a member of the board, the issue of the floodplain, the new flood plan maps affecting buildability on lots, at that time, it was a question of it was that case out in Rock Harbor where the fellow wanted to build on a lot, and that for his whole life, he'd been in the family a long time. It'd been a buildable lot, floodplain map changed, and the question was asked, or he or his counsel asked the planning board, how many lots that had been buildable, vacant lots, how many empty lots that had been buildable prior to the new floodplain maps were affected and lost their ability to have a building put on them. And they came back, I think the number was 4, as I recall. This was one of 4 that had no building on it, but that had lost its ability to build a building and lost the 40,000 square feet upland because of the new flood maps. So that struck me that they had the ability to do that in the building department, in the planning department, rather, excuse me. So it would seem to me they would have an ability to also identify all the lots in town that had subsequently lost the ability to have 40,000 square feet of upland as a result of the, was it 2014 or the 2015 new flood maps. So that would sort of bracket the problem. We'd know the extent or the possible extent of issues that would come before us. I'm wondering if that's a project that they could do. I don't know if it's hard or easy, but they came up with that number of 4, as I recall.
That was my memory too, and as a matter of fact, that's exactly how we left the issue from that agenda last week, is that the town planner was going to do the calculation that you suggested to see. And again, a lot of the Rock Harbor properties were so affected by that case that I think we denied either the permit or the variance. And there was a subsequent appeal that was to the Superior Court that was withdrawn. But there's more situations than that, and I kind of described them. I had to do it in a vacuum because we were independent.
Right.
But he is undertaking that project to number the different situations, the different number of lots,
Right.
Residential lots principally, that are affected by the extension of the floodplain maps.
Right.
So you're right on.
It would be interesting too, just from reading the local paper, other towns are even more severely affected than Orleans. I know that in Dennis and Harwich, parts of, I wonder how those towns are dealing with it. It's not a problem sui generis to
No,
Orleans.
no, but what happened, the problem as I expressed it was that we were, the amendment to the zoning bylaw was made, and then much to our surprise, when the flood maps were redrawn, the effect of it was surprising and
Right.
far more extensive. and made it difficult because we found ourselves looking at the variance tests rather than special permit. And so that is it. I'll keep reporting, but it's not for us to, it's not for us in this forum at these meetings to recommend, those zoning bylaw changes are recommended by the planning board.
All right. Is there a alliance of other planning boards, they get together and discuss issues
You know,
across the Cape?
I think there is, but I didn't talk about that. I think there is. I'm quite sure that there is.
Thank you. Thank you.
To me, that would be fruitful too,
Yeah, right.
instead of reinventing the wheel. Members of the board, I don't remember, did we receive minutes of the meeting of October 17th?
We did.
Very well. Then I'll entertain a motion to approve and accept those meetings.
I move their
And
approval.
minutes.
Move their approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now that we are operating in the absence of an officially appointed board secretary, I'm taking it upon myself to make appropriate notes.
You have access to the recordings if necessary.
Yes,
With no increase in salary?
no increase in no increase in salary. I can report on that as well. There were two applications. We proceeded to an interview of one applicant who was found to be acceptable, and it was left with the town to pursue the appointment and negotiate the details, and somewhere in the middle of that discussion, the application was withdrawn. So any possible candidates would address themselves to the town administrator. I think that's. Very well.
So that's how they would have to initiate the applications. I think Mr. Taub may have someone that,
Yes, I saw that cryptic suggestion that that would be the way for the applicant to follow up with or without your assistance.
Without.
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen, two cases on the agenda, and the first of which is the case number 2099. That's the application of Peter and Eleanor Budrick for a special permit as set forth in General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 6, under Orleans zoning bylaw, Section 164-21A-05, to construct a front porch on a pre-existing dwelling which is non-conforming with regard to building coverage. This property is located at 156 Rock Harbor Road, Orleans, map number 17, parcel number 51. Any members of the board I ask whether any members of the board have had any communication with the applicant or any of the applicant's agents, which ought to be disclosed to the board or the public, or which would constitute a conflict of interest. There is no positive response, therefore I declare that the members of the board as constituted are indifferent and impartial. Mr. Little. Mr. Little, you know that now we do have a quorum. For a vote, you will need all four.
I'm aware of that, and I would like to proceed.
Very well. We'll give you the chance at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Little from Ryder and Wilcox, representing Peter and Eleanor Budrick. Ken Spacek Olson of HSO Contracting is with me as well. He's the gentleman in the back that has HSO on his sweatshirt. He is the contractor that's been working on the interior of the house. So it was interesting that you were talking about flood zones earlier, because this property in 2014 was completely mapped into a flood zone. So that being said, we have, well, I shouldn't say completely
No, it
mapped.
isn't all of it.
No, it wasn't completely mapped into a flood zone, but a significant portion of it was mapped into the flood zone. And we are here because the coverage on the property presently is 1,119 square feet. And the proposed coverage on the property is going to go to 1,976 square feet. What's triggering this is the existing coverage is 16.2% of the buildable upland, and the proposed coverage is 16.7% of the buildable upland. In the Orleans zoning bylaw states that in no case shall any property percent building coverage. Fortunately, because on the Budrick property, because they already exceed the 15%, we are allowed via a special permit to come in to request an increase, because we are increasing a nonconformity but not creating a new nonconformity. So that being said, the reason for the proposed porch and the ramp and deck additions on the rear is that Mrs. Budrick is her health requires that she use a wheelchair. And so we are, Hans and his company have prepared the plans that I provided you that shows what they're doing to the inside of the house and to the outside of the house, providing handicap access around the rear of the house and then handicaps access to the porch. But really, all we are here for is the fact that we are proposing to have a covered porch that increases the building coverage. We did appear before the Conservation Commission yesterday. They have approved the plan pending receipt of a DEP file number. It's a formality. There were no issues with the Conservation Commission. So that being said, did everybody have a chance to drive by and see the house? If not, I have a couple of photos I can pass out.
Thanks, David.
It's a modest ranch located on Rock Harbor Road. So as to the special permit criteria, we believe the site is adequate for the increase in building coverage, which only amounts to 57 square feet. We believe it's suitable for the addition. The proposed porch complies with all dimensional requirements of the zoning bylaw. There would be no additional impact on traffic flow or safety. There will be no new impact on neighborhood visual character. The dwelling is served by a Title V sewage disposal system and town water. There are no stormwater drainage issues on the site. We believe that the adequacy of utilities and public services are not impacted by the project. There would be no noise and litter other than temporary noise impacts during construction. If you had a chance to go to the site, you could see that Hans Olsen's been working on it for quite some time, and it's very tidy. And finally, the impact of groundwater quality, recharge volume, and water quality of coastal and freshwater bodies will not be impacted by the project. So there is a definite need for Mrs. Budrick to make these changes to the dwelling, and we hope that you can find that the project is in harmony with the intent of the bylaw, and it will not be more detrimental in the neighborhood.
So already we have existing a railing which extends out to almost to the edge of the curved driveway.
That's something that Hans put up temporarily. What he intends to build will be much more, it'll be to code and it will be much more elaborate. That was merely to help Mrs. Budrick get in and out of the house.
Very well. So a ramp itself probably would not have involved any permitting, except now that there's going to be a porch at the end of it, so is that why we're concerned about the
We're-
part of
we're-
the ramp is in the floodplain?
Well, we're really here because we're increasing the building coverage by 57 square feet. The roof over the proposed porch causes our building coverage to go from 16.2% to 16.7%. So we have an increase in the non-conforming nature of the building coverage.
So that's the only inconsistency that we have to resolve.
Yes, the other
We don't
issues,
have to worry about the new deck in the back.
no. And all the other issues relative to the floodplain and the wetlands were dealt with by the Conservation Commission.
All right.
If I understand, if my math is correct, it's a 0.5% increase percentage-wise. And
That's correct, Bill.
57 square. So that's about as de minimis as one can get.
This is, they said in some of those elections last night too, those kind of percentages.
Some of them still up in the air.
That's right.
So if you were under 15%, and you wanted to build just a little bit, it's not possible?
Well, it would require a variance.
Variance.
And I would have to demonstrate a hardship, and
Yeah.
perhaps I would be able to in this case, given the situation and the need. But fortunately, we don't have to go that route.
No, there's nothing in the zoning bylaw that allows any relief for accessibility. Is there?
I don't know.
I'm not aware of it,
I would defer to the building inspector on that.
yeah.
Not in residential uses.
On non-residential uses, there is.
There is a-
Well, sooner or later, we'll have to deal with the accessibility for residences, I suppose. All right. Any other questions from any members of the board? Is there anyone present wishing to speak in favor of this application? Or opposed to the application? Or just commenting on the application? There's no positive response. Mr. Little, if you don't have anything further, I'll close the hearing for the taking of evidence. And I'll ask the sense of the board.
I believe that
What's it
we
for?
think that this is de minimis and that we should approve it, and I would so move.
Very well.
I'd second it.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0, Mr. Little. I will write the opinion appropriate to the motion to grant the special permit.
Thank you.
Just curious, did I see in the checklist of required permissions that the Old Kings Highway one was?
I saw that too.
Yes, and Hans Spacek Olson represented them before the Old Kings Highway, and that was granted.
Oh, okay, great.
Very well. I have case number 2100. This is the application of Andrew A. Barnard, or Andrew A. Barnard trustee, as for a special permit is set forth in General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 6. Under our Orleans zoning bylaw, Section 16421C, to renovate a pre-existing dwelling, which is non-conforming in respect to setback from the top of a coastal bank. This property is located at 49 Aspinett Road, Orleans map number 22, parcel number 57. Is any member of the board been involved in any communication with the applicant or any applicant's agents, which ought to be disclosed to the board, the public, or would otherwise constitute a conflict of interest. No positive response. Therefore, I declare that the full members of the board are indifferent and impartial. So you may proceed, Mr. Little.
Thank you. Again, for the record, David Little representing Andrew Barnard. This is another situation where the flood zone adopted in 2014 is bringing us to the zoning board. If you look at the site plan that I provided you, there is a bordering vegetated wetland immediately north of the house on the site plan. Well, that is a freshwater wetland, and prior to 2014, there was no coastal bank here. After 2014, this became a flood zone. The flood zone now intersects the bank. Now we have a coastal bank. So this is another example of a property that has become impacted by the new flood zone, specifically the fact that now, because the flood zone intersects the bank and the bank is a certain slope, we have to go up to the top of the bank to determine where that bank is located, where it becomes less steep than a 4-to-1 slope. So, saying all that, right now, this house is located 1 foot from the top of the coastal bank at its closest point. And so we are here because of the 16421C that states a house is required to be set back 1.5 times its height from the top of the coastal bank. And this house is 20.4 feet tall, requiring a 30.6 foot setback from the top of the coastal bank, but it's only set back 1 foot. So we are very much non-conforming, and we would like to increase the height by 2.9 feet, so we are increasing the non-conforming nature of the dwelling with respect to its setback from the top of the coastal bank. And so essentially, we're supposed to be set back 30.6. With the change in the house, we should be set back 35 feet, and we're only set back 1. So what is driving this, if I could point out the house plans to you. The current configuration of the house, it has a very
Say a page and reference.
I am looking at page A22. If I could draw your attention to that page. Thank you, Mr. Taub. Presently, if you look at the section, you can see that the roof goes up, and the red dashed lines that go down are what presently exists for the roof. So right now, the roof goes like this and that. And what the Barnards want to do is just change the roof line to go like that. So we're increasing the height by, let me make sure I have this correctly, by 2.9 feet. And that is what's causing us to come before the zoning board because of that increase in height and our non-conforming nature with the setback to the top of the coastal bank.
Well, actually, you have a chimney that's going to be demolished.
Well, actually,
And the height of that chimney
that-
was probably
they've been-
equivalent to the new.
they've actually
proposed-
already demolished the chimney, Mr. Marnick. They got permission to go ahead and do some interior renovation work.
But the point is, the height of that chimney, which when it was there, is roughly equivalent to where the highest point of the new roof
Well,
would be.
it is, but chimneys are not
I know you're
calculated in
you're not-
height.
No, I was
Yeah.
looking at it, as where the rubber meets the road. That's what I'm seeing.
No, yes, you're absolutely right.
For a-
Yep.
For a structure which has a height.
Yes, and then other than that, other than the fact that we're going up 2.9 feet, there is a 3 square foot increase in the footprint of the dwelling. But that complies with the building coverage requirement. We're going from 12.53% to 12.56%. We're only increasing the coverage by 0.03%, but that's not why we're before the zoning board. We're here strictly because of our setback to the top of the coastal bank.
But what you're doing is, in that distance, the 1 foot distance is from the point of the existing foundation.
Well, it's measured, believe it or not, to the deck. The deck, if you look at the plan, the deck is located 1 foot from the top of the coastal bank. Because it's connected to the dwelling, we have to make the measurements go to the deck, not to the foundation.
All right.
Is this not a pre-existing nonconformity as a result of the changes in the wetland, and now asking, we've had cases like that before, where some condition on the property was consistent with the bylaws previously, the building pre-existed, the bylaws changed in some manner, and nothing would bring that property before us until there's an attempt to further seek either a special permit or a variance relative to this. I don't even think the coastal bank plays into our consideration here, but I may not be understanding that correctly.
Well, 16421C,
Yeah?
it is pre-existing non-conforming with respect to that section, and that does specifically refer to coastal banks. But you're
Right.
correct. Prior to the new flood zone being established, we wouldn't have had the setback
Because it
issue.
was already a pre-existing non-conforming blah, blah, right?
Yes.
Right.
How does the floodplain affect the definition of the coastal bank?
So when a floodplain intersects a landform, so let's say this is the landform. If a floodplain intersects it, depending on the slope, you have to go up the landform until it gets less steep than a certain slope. So in this case, we have to go all the way up to where it almost becomes flat, and by definition, that becomes the top of the coastal bank.
And prior to the floodplain, the coastal bank was determined by a steepness somewhere else?
Well, there was no
There was no coastal bank.
coastal bank here because there was no floodplain. You only have a coastal bank in saltwater situations. So on your property, Mr. Mulligan, the top of the coastal bank is basically the top of the revetment.
Right.
Because that's where the landform changes.
We have that same situation here. I can see that there's a 10-foot drop from the edge of the deck over roughly a 29-foot span. And that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
Somewhere in that 10-foot drop is.
It's where the flood
where
zone.
the flood zone. But
Exactly.
you're gonna have to keep on going up, and as it turns out, it's somewhere in the vicinity of where the deck is established.
Exactly. So if I could quickly address the special permit criteria, we believe the site is suitable for the proposed renovations. The existing foundation will remain. The first floor footprint increases by only 3 square feet. The site is suitable for the units. The setback from the top of the coastal bank remains the same. There would be no new impact on traffic flow or safety. The only new impact on neighborhood visual character is the change to the roof line, which results in a 2.9-foot increase in the height on the east side of the dwelling. The property is served by a Title V sewage disposal system and town water, and there are no drainage issues on the site. Utilities and public services are not impacted by the project. There will be no noise impacts or litter other than the temporary noise during construction, and a dumpster will be located on site to contain all debris. And we did receive an order of conditions from the Orleans Conservation Commission assuring that the impact on groundwater quality, recharge volume, and water quality of coastal and freshwater bodies will be protected. That would be my presentation, thank you.
Maybe I was confused then. I thought that this was going to be a new deck.
No,
Well, your notes
They-
say that it may be.
they may be replacing the deck boards, but the support structure for the deck is going to remain the same.
All right, no, that's fine.
No, the deck exists.
David, what's the public purpose of having a setback tied to the height of a building on a coastal bank?
Aesthetics,
Just aesthetics.
this has been going on since the 80s, and the increasing the we're very fortunate, I think, as having had the Gale ruling come down to allow people in a case like this to come before the board to increase a nonconformity with a special permit. Otherwise, it would have to be a variance. And I think that's been very helpful to situations exactly like this.
It's just someone's idea of aesthetics in the,
If you're looking from the water, the further back it is, the less impact it has. I think that's why it was adopted. I don't know for sure.
curious.
And if-
And that causes some people to have difficulty getting the height in their dwelling to a point that they would like it, because before, when it required a variance, it would be a very high bar to prove.
hardship wouldn't be difficult to prove the hardship.
Yes.
Need a point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
At one point, I thought I heard there would be 0 increase in the footprint, and there would be a modest increase in the volume, the square footage of the interior of the building. And then at the last that you spoke, I thought I heard you say there would be a 3-foot increase in the footprint.
3 square foot increase in the first floor, not in the foundation, a cantilevered area that's going to increase by 3 square feet, and that would be this area right there. The 3 square feet of increase is that right there. And it's only on the first floor. It's not, it's cantilevered over the
Can you
basement.
reference that in one of these drawings?
Yep. That is shown on page.
A.4.1.
A11 is probably the best one to see it on. The current foundation goes like this, Mr. Todd, it goes like that, and that, and that.
Sorry. I see.
So that's
This
the
is
current
it.
foundation,
Yeah.
This is what we.
and this is what we're expanding by 3 square feet.
Could you show Mr. McCarthy and
So-
Mulligan?
Presently, so this is where the existing foundation is. And this floor is going to cover this. It's going to be cantilevered.
Oh.
And there's a post here, and then there's foundation here, so that is 3 square feet where the footprint is increasing.
I also ask why that's required.
It's not. I was just pointing that out, that,
Why isn't the design not included any, even de minimis increase in the square, I'm confused now, tell me again, it's a 3 square foot
We're-
increase in.
the building coverage is 12.53%, which conforms to the zoning bylaw. And we're going to 12.56%, increasing it by 3 square feet. That was just a point of information that I was providing to the board. It doesn't require relief. What requires relief is our setback from the top of the coastal bank. Maybe I was providing the board with too much information.
No, never, no,
That passed through my mind.
Can I just ask a curious question, which is functionally, the purpose of the redesign is to expand the height, or?
It's to open up the entire inside of the house. Currently, there's a huge chimney that goes up through the middle of it that they're removing, and it's a small house as it is, and they're opening it up
I see.
to make it one open space, so to speak.
It's really maximizing the concept of the deck as an additional room.
3 square feet of it.
No, but it's the whole length of that side of the house.
Well, it exists, though. The deck does exist.
Right.
Yep.
But whatever you do in the inside to remove it and increase the space maximizes the effect
Oh, I
of
see.
the
Yeah,
deck.
yes, you're absolutely right.
See? So it brings the deck into the house as an additional living space. It's used that way, I understand, but that's the aesthetic concept behind it. At least that's the way I looked when I saw the plans, that's what I thought it must have been, what was the, that was the intention. See, if it isn't, it's gonna be the effect of it, I think.
I'm just curious, given, I was looking at the list of abutters, and the United States of America shows up as the abutter within the range of, for a number of the 5-0, Aspen and some others. So, did you have to interact at all with?
Not at all. We had to notify them for the Conservation Commission hearing, and we had to notify them for this, and there were no comments.
Yeah, can see why there'd be.
There
no-
is one abutter in the audience here this evening that,
There's actually two.
2, excuse me.
That leads me to a question that I often ask in this context, which is, has the owner or you or some other representative interacted with the butters?
One abutter reached out to me, and I responded to them and made plans available to them. They didn't ask to see them, but they reached out to me, and I did get back to them.
Okay. No more questions.
Any more, do you have a question, Mr. Mulligan?
No,
Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application? Then, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition or commenting upon it? There's no-
Just here to observe and listen.
There's no positive response, therefore I will, unless there are further questions by members of the board, I will close the hearing for the taking of evidence and ask the sense of the board. I'm in favor of this, issuing a special permit.
I too am.
I'd make the motion.
Mr. Mulligan's motion.
I'd like to have a brief discussion before
Very
we
well.
move the
We'll need it.
question.
We'll need a second before we can do
I'll
that.
second.
Mr. McCarthy, second Mr. Mulligan's motion. Now this discussion on the motion.
Oh, okay. It's interesting to struggle with to what extent you're a constitutional fundamentalist or an interpreter thereof. And in relationship to the question of the flood bank, which was being discussed earlier, my own view was that every case that comes before us is to be taken on a case-by-case basis on the merits.
Yes, sir.
And while I understand Mr. Mulligan's desire to provide relief in lieu of blah, 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 I often find myself thinking, as I think about that, the Supreme Court doesn't take hypothetical questions. The Supreme Court doesn't set legislation. This is what we're given. And so this is an opportunity for me to say, that in 99 out of 100 cases like this, I would deny this because I am so sensitive to the property location. And you live with what you got. You got the blessing of that location, and you treat it with the maximum amount of respect. Having pontificated in this way, I am prepared to vote favorably.
Very well.
Notwithstanding your,
I just wanted to be
No,
able to express on the record
Yeah.
my view
No,
in light of my upcoming vote in favor of this.
very well. Your opinion is valued and appreciated.
Thank you, sir.
And I understand it completely. There are topographical influences with every lot. And I have a sense that this lot is excused from any magnificent effect, even though the change is minimal, because of the topography, which doesn't seem to disturb anyone, certainly on the legal abutters list or otherwise. That's the effect of the Nauset Heights area,
Mhm.
and we've been watching that.
Well, I think what's especially de minimis in this is there's no further encroachment by the landowner, the homeowner.
That's actually not true. There is. There's a 3-foot encroachment.
No, it's not encroaching. That
It's a
3 foot,
cantilever.
that 3 foot is not
No, that's
encroaching
not
on the
in-
bank.
No,
It's not.
no, the cantilever is not why we're here.
I understand. It's
We're
not-
here because the height is increasing by 2
I
points.
understand it. I understand that. The cantilever extends the range up. That's not worth talking about.
Well, it changes the wall, it changes the exterior wall,
Well-
that's all it does.
No, if you look at the building height calculations on my plan,
Yeah,
it's very, that's the only reason we're here.
No, I understand that part of it. I
That's-
think
it
all the
has
members
no-
of the board understand that.
The setback to the top of the coastal bank is 1 foot now, and it's going to be 1 foot when we're done. We're not changing the setback, we're increasing the height.
you know,
So there's no encroachment on the bank whatsoever by what you're bringing here.
We're not.
It's just a visual, it's just a.
We're, the required setback is 20.4 feet,
I understand,
and we're 1 foot away.
I understand.
By increasing it 2.9 feet, the new
Height.
setback
Height.
is 23.3.
But you're not getting any closer.
But you're not getting any
No.
closer to the bank.
No,
However,
No part of the house is getting any closer to the bank.
absolutely.
So
However, just for philosophical purposes to follow on Mr. Tobb's comment, I mean, that the purpose that you described about setbacks from a coastal bank and the underlying rationale for it, while my support has been expressed, philosophically, one could take the view that increasing the height of a structure that is so close to the bank that is violative of the spirit of the setback rule, but you know, I think that what you presented and what the applicant is seeking to do is, in this context, not going to no harm, no foul type of, pardon the.
It's
the
not
vernacular.
creating any more usable space other than 3 square feet. It's going to allow a little bit more sunlight into the house. I mean, it's
No,
not, the habitable space stays essentially unchanged.
So I guess it's a hypothetical question, if someone decided they wanted to erect a tower, so to speak, so that they, at the top of the tower, could get better views than they have. In that case, you'd be telling us that the height increase is X feet, whatever it is. In that circumstance, I think perhaps our sensitivity to the setback rule might be a different consideration. Would you, in concept, agree?
Absolutely, but keep in mind, the zoning bylaw caps it at 30 feet, period. You could never go higher than 30 feet.
Except with a
Good
variance.
point. Well, point taken, sure.
Except with a variance or a special permit.
And unless if you already exceeded 30 feet, yes, then you could come in with a special permit to exceed it further, but we would have to demonstrate, go through the special permit criteria to do that. I don't mean to disagree with you. I didn't mean to.
It was just an opportunity for, I had not participated in the conversation about the setback impact of the new flood zone rules. And my view was that at this point in time, we take that on a case-by-case basis because we have
That's
no
right.
choice.
That's right.
And I just wanted to indicate that in this particular location, I have a heightened sensitivity, whereas I might offer some grace in one flood zone situation, I might not in another. And in as much as I've indicated that I'm prepared to vote in favor of this, I didn't want it to go down without noting my stance about these matters in general, where I would be more rigid than and less forgiving than I would normally be. And I'm prepared to, I've had as much discussion as I need about it, and I'm happy to call the question.
Very well. Well, I am in favor of the, granting the special permit also, but the overlay here isn't what happened is the existence and location of the floodplain or the coastal bank, that aspect of the topography was only the trigger to the increase in height. Now, if the applicant were looking for an increase of height of a fraction of an inch, we would still be faced with dealing with that problem because of the general principle that the use is not detrimental to the established or future character of the neighborhood, or specifically that there would be no detrimental or substantial impact on the neighborhood visual character. That's always in front of us for special permits, and we'll always be looking at that. In this case, we inquired and we took evidence to deal with that, but that's really what happened, I think, and I understand that. Generally, we've heard over the years some objections to the impact on the neighborhood visual character, which related to height, and what was really the underlayment was the effect on view. And that's kind of sacred. Then, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? The motion carries unanimously. I will write the opinion in support of the motion to issue a special permit.
Thank you very much.
That concludes the agenda, gentlemen. If there's no further business, we'll motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second by Mr. McCarthy. All those in favor?
That was not a very resounding aye.
The motion to adjourn is allowed.
Unless